Hello, I'm Paul, and this is Paul Plays with Fire. I'm so glad you stopped by today. Grab a chair. Today on the show, we're going to be making my favorite sandwich, the king of Midwestern greasy spoons and county fairs, the breaded pork tenderloin, or to those in the know, the BPT. So, what is a breaded pork tenderloin? It's a 5 to 8 ounce piece of pork loin, much like a boneless pork chop, pounded out flat, breaded and fried. So good, oh, and so good for you. I've been eating breaded pork tenderloins for as long as I can remember. If you aren't from the Tenderloin Belt, you may have never heard of a breaded pork tenderloin. Where's the Tenderloin Belt, you ask? It's a section of the Midwest that stretches from Indiana through Illinois and Iowa and down into northern Missouri. Outside of the Tenderloin Belt, you will seldom run across a BPT, but inside of the Tenderloin Belt, most every local place will serve some sort of breaded pork tenderloin. My first tenderloin is probably at a little family-run restaurant that was located just 3 miles down the road here. Most days there, it seemed like every other plate in that restaurant had a BPT on it. They were so good. So what I'm going to do today is show you how I make a breaded pork tenderloin. I'll take you through the steps and I'll show you the 3 different ways that I cook them. We're going to cook one in a deep fryer. We'll fry one on the Blackstone Griddle right here, and we'll oven fry the third one. And you know what? They will all be delicious. So let's get busy. What we have here is 3 8-ounce pork chops. They're boneless pork chops and they're really just cut right off a pork loin. Our grocery store has them all the time. So we're going to take the silver skin, that white part are on the edge, and we're just going to slice that off because that wouldn't be very good in a sandwich. That's pretty easy. We don't have to do too much. We don't have to think too much about this. Just slice it right off. There's one down. And at 8 ounces of these, you're going to make a nice big sandwich. Big as your head, as they like to say. Or I've seen it at state fairs, they also call it an elephant's ear, because it's about that size. Elephant's ear tenderloin. We've got our pork chops trimmed up just like that. The next step is to pound them out. Step 2. Step 2 is to pound those tenderloins out. What we have here is a Ziploc bag. I'm just going to drop it in there. And there's some people that are very passionate about how thick their tenderloin is. Some people like them paper thin. I like them a little bit thicker than that. That's why I use an 8-ounce chop instead of a 5-ounce chop. And I don't pound them quite so thin. Takes them a little longer to cook. They come out a little juicier, which I prefer, but that's just, like I said, it's people are very passionate about it. We've got our tenderloin in a bag, and we're just gonna cover your ears, and we're literally gonna pound this out. It does tenderize it. And I'm using my shop hammer. It's a really good mallet though. That's one down. We'll go ahead and do the other 2 and then we'll get to the breading. Well, we have our pounded out tenderloins. Look at that, isn't that perfect? 3 of them nicely there, and I'd say they're about 1/4 of an inch thick. So they're not paper thin, but they're not a pork chop either. Then we're gonna bread it, and we're gonna bread it first in an egg wash where we have an egg. We'll put an egg in there. We'll put about 1/4 cup of milk and a dab of mayonnaise. And we'll mix that all up. After the egg wash, we'll come into the flour mix where we got flour. We have about 1/2 cup of flour and 1/2 cup of panko. What's panko, you ask? I'm so glad you asked. It's a Japanese style breadcrumb. A lot of people use cracker crumbs, a lot of people just use breadcrumbs. I really like the panko. It just really gives a good crisp flavor to it, especially when you're doing them in the oven. That crisps up really well. You know, in the deep fryer, it's really easy to get them crisp. Not so much on the flat top or in the oven. So the panko works well for that. And then to that, the panko and the flour, we're also adding a teaspoon of salt and half a teaspoon of pepper. So we'll just mix, let's start by mixing get the egg in there, the milk, and the mayo. A little dab of mayo. I like that because it really helps the tenderloin stick. I'm not used to these cameras. By the way, we're in a new studio. I don't know if you've noticed or not. We've moved to a new venue for winter, and I'm not used to the cameras yet. So it'll happen, or I'll move them around one way or the other. So anyway, we'll mix this up good until the mayonnaise is all dissolved. And like I said, the mayonnaise helps the egg wash stick to the pork chop. And then next up, we have our flour and our panko, and our salt and our pepper. And we'll just mix that all up well too. There we go. Just like it's supposed to look. One of the biggest complaints I hear about tenderloins is they're not seasoned well enough. They don't have enough seasoning on them. They're just bland. That won't be the case with mine. So I'm gonna mix this all up, then we'll come back and we'll do the dipping. Okay, here's our process. We're ready to do the dipping. And so we're gonna do wet hand, dry hand, and we're gonna take our pork chops, our pork tenderloins, and we're gonna dip them in the egg, and we're gonna get them really nice and dredged, really good dredge. Bring them up, let them sit a little bit, and then get them in the flour, and get them a really good dredge in the flour too, both sides, the flour and the panko. So good dredge in that. Go ahead and bring some up on top. I don't have quite a big enough bowl, but that's okay. And it'll find its own equilibrium. I mean, it'll stop accepting stuff when it's had enough. And then we're just gonna lay it out here on a piece of freezer paper and do it all over again. It really doesn't take too long. And the results are worth it. Let that drip off. Dredge both sides. You know, if we were smart, we'd go ahead and make some onion rings right now too, but we aren't that smart. The panko sticks really good too. Throw another one on there. Looks like we're gonna have just the right amount. Okay, there we go. That's 3 beautiful breaded pork tenderloins, BPTs. We're gonna go ahead and put those in the fridge, and we're gonna let those rest for about a half an hour, and they tighten up while they're in there. Then we're gonna turn on our heating sources. We're gonna heat up some cooking oil. We're gonna heat up the blacktop, and we're gonna preheat the oven, and then we're gonna have a big tenderloin party. Okay, well, I'm looking forward to it. I'm getting hungry. Well, I think we have all our tenderloins in a row, or ducks in a row, or whatever. I think we're ready. So we've got our 3 breaded tenderloins that have been resting in the fridge for half an hour now, and so they've really tightened up nicely. We have some condiments and some buns that we've set out, so when the time comes, we're ready, because things are gonna happen kind of fast here. We've got our heat sources. We got our Blackstone Griddle, where we have a hot side where we're gonna grill one of the tenderloins right on the griddle, and another side where we have hot oil. Don't stick your finger in there. Hot oil, where we're gonna fry the tenderloin. We know that is gonna be the fastest. That's probably gonna take about 4 minutes. This may take 10, 12 minutes, and I know inside will take 22 minutes. So we're gonna start that one first. And one of the first things we do with that, we have just a little bit of butter here, and we wanna go ahead and melt that butter. And then we're gonna take one of the tenderloins, put it on that butter, smear it around, and then the butter does a nice job of browning in the oven. So by putting a little melted butter on there, dipping it in both sides, then when we put it in the oven, it'll brown up very nicely. You'll see in a second here. Just melt that around real quick. And our tenderloins are just so nice looking. I'm so pleased with them. Look at that, just perfect. So we're gonna take this top one, put it down in the butter. We're not cooking it here, we're just smearing it around a little bit to get some butter on it. Yep, see, that's worked. Then we're gonna smear the other right side around. And the idea is that we soak up all the butter that's there on the platter. By the way, new welding gloves, birthday present. Look at that. Whew. This guy's not gonna get burned. Okay, both sides have been sufficiently soaked. We're gonna take this inside and put it in the oven. And here's where we're gonna just put it in the oven at 400 degrees for 22 minutes. While our first tenderloin is cooking, we're gonna prepare our buns. And there's something about tenderloins. They always have comically small buns on top of comically large tenderloins. So it's a thing. The way to brown up the buns just perfectly is to use a little mayonnaise. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna spread a little mayonnaise on there. And they're gonna pop them right down on the flat top. See, it's just a little mayonnaise on there. Now we'll toast them up real nice. And this doesn't take very long. Yep, just about that long is what it takes. It's also really good for grilled cheese sandwiches, I've heard. I haven't tried it yet, but look at that nice toasting right there. Another nice one. And the toasting is kind of ridiculous because you'll never even be able to see it anyway once you get that big old tenderloin on top of it, but it's just fun. I said I was gonna put this on at 15 minutes, and it turns out we're at 15 minutes. So we're gonna go ahead and put a little fresh oil on there, maybe check the heat. And just put a little. And then we're gonna put this one on. This is probably the thinnest of all of them. And we want that to cook for just a little bit. That's gonna brown for, we'll see how long it takes. Now we're gonna flip our tenderloin that's in the oven. It's been 11 minutes. That looks pretty good. It looks real good. The grill tenderloin has been on for about, 6-7 minutes, so I'm just going ahead and flip it and see what we got. Oh, that looks very nice. Look at that. Look at that nice brown color. Very nice. Perfect. Just what we want. And it's still 8 minutes left, so it's too soon to put the other one in yet, but we're getting really close. Well, I said 6 minutes is where I was going to drop the one in the deep fat, and here we are. 6 minutes into hot oil. And the oil is it's a little hot right now, but it'll drop in temperature. It's about 375, 380. So we're gonna very, very gently, we're not gonna flop it in, we're just gonna slowly lower it in. Just like that. There we go. Safety first. We don't want anybody getting hurt here. Okay, we're cooking now. Whew. I'm hungry. This is really gonna be good. I'd say I just got to that one in the nick of time. That gets really hot really fast. No, about 6 minutes. About 6 minutes. Look at that thing. Isn't that just beautiful? Oh. I'd say that one's done too. And based on our timer, I'd say the oven one is done also. We're gonna leave that, we're gonna leave that, we're gonna go get the one out of the oven, and then we're gonna eat. Time for tenderloin number 2, our griddle tenderloin. Oh, that looks pretty good. Looks really good. Nice and brown on one side, a little crisper on the other side. Really good. Let's get a close-up of that there. Now let's go inside and get our third tenderloin and we'll be all set to go here. Okay, 3 different ways of cooking a tenderloin, and they're all pretty good. I think I know which my favorite's gonna be though. Okay, this is method number 1. This is in the oven, and you can see from the spotting, it's a little bit spotty when it comes to browning, but it's a brown tenderloin, and if it's what you had, it'd be pretty darn good. And I've eaten that tenderloin a lot of times over the years, because sometimes you just don't want to heat up a whole vat of oil. The second one is the griddle fried tenderloin, and that's pretty good. I'm kind of new to this because I haven't had a Blackstone until now, but that looks really good too. Look at that. And then finally, I think my personal favorite, that is the deep fried tenderloin, and it's cooked the fastest, cooked in about 6 minutes. So we're gonna take the deep fried one, I think. We're gonna take the deep fried one. We're gonna put a little tomato on there. We're gonna put a little lettuce, maybe underneath there. And we're gonna put a little some pickles around there. Sometimes it just seems to take all day to get to this point, but I'm so glad we're here. I mean, look at this beautiful sandwich. Breaded pork tenderloin with all the trimmings. Perfectly done, perfectly seasoned, just the right amount of crispy, just the right amount of thick, the right amount of thin. It's the sandwich of my youth. Oh, boy, that's so good. And you can still find them around here if you know where to look. This has been Paul Plays with Fire. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to click in this video and watch it next. See you next time.